The one thing I'd say, Simon, the only person I know with less information about himself on a website is me. So we need to fill in the blanks, I guess.
Yeah, I don't kind of put myself out there much. This is quite unusual. Yeah, I mean, I used to have more. I think I probably used to have more on my website, and I kind of like I've pared it down, because when you read about what should be on a portfolio website, it's all about the pictures, isn't it? You just show your pictures, and I don't think there's even a picture of me on my website at the moment. Most people have that. But yeah, I mean, also I suppose the more you put on, the more chance you've got of putting somebody off. I want people to know my pictures rather than me. I don't think they're necessarily booking my personality or
No. So, but where did you start?
So I started. I did electronics at university in Cardiff, and during my university degree, I worked for the student newspaper. I wanted something to do, the ex-curriculum thing. You're supposed to do something outside of your lecture, so I thought, I'll do that. I had a camera already, a cheap Praktica SLR, and I was quite into it. And because I was doing electronics and sciencey engineering things, I was quite into the gear. So, SLRs, all the interchangeable lenses and flashes and all the rest of it. So I started doing stuff for the university newspaper. I really got into the photography side of it. We had a darkroom there, and we learned how to do black and white printing and processing your own film and all that kind of stuff. By the time I got to the end of university, I wanted to do that rather than be an engineer. So foolishly, I turned down a job straight out of university and thought, no, I'll be a freelance photographer. I went to America for 3 months to teach kids at summer camp. Did that exchange thing that you do at the end of university. And then when I got back, I sent a couple of pictures of some stuff to the Echo in Cardiff, and they called me and said, "Oh, are you a freelance?" I said, "Well, yeah." All right, we need freelancers. Come in and we'll try you out. And I did a week's work experience on the Echo, and they were like, "Yeah, great. We'll start giving you money now for jobs. So keep your phone on, and we'll phone you." And it literally started from there. And I used to do like anything from 1 to 6 jobs a day. I was just rushing around doing. I think I was getting paid £20 a job, and then I was doing the Echo for about, I don't know, it's probably 7 or 8 years, and then they said, "Oh, we're giving you loads of work. Do you want to do shifts instead? Regular, 5 days a week. You can do the late shift, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m." And I did that for a couple of years, and then the Western Mail, who were giving me occasional jobs, said, "Oh, well, we could use you as well. We'll share your shift between the two papers, and you can work for both. We'll just share you between the two papers." So they used to fight over me then and decide who I was working for. So I was, all in all, probably 15 years on the papers. I was never staff. I was freelance. I was in and out. I worked out of the office and went in the darkroom, processed my films there. Did the whole digital transition while I was at the newspapers. I think 2001. Mm-hmm. I spent $4,500 on my 4 megapixel Canon 1D. And started the digital thing then. And then would have been after about 15 years, then that's when the newspaper started to suffer, and they didn't have the money. And it was like, "We can't afford to pay you anymore." They weren't paying me much. We can't afford to pay you anymore. We'll keep you on odd jobs when we can afford it, but the shifts will have to stop. And it's like, right, okay. During the time of working in newspapers, I started doing PR and corporate stuff, because one of the things PR firms used to phone up, like if it was a London PR firm, the way they'd find a photographer was to phone up the picture desk of the local paper and say, "Do you know any photographers?"
Ah, right.
So I used to get PR work as well. So I was concentrating on PR and corporate stuff, did a bit of that. And then probably, I'm terrible with dates, I can never really remember when I did stuff, but not long after that, I had done that for a couple of years. I was doing stuff for other photographers when they got double booked as well. And I had a call from one photographer. He said, "Oh, I do this thing for Comic Relief sometimes. They phone me up and say, 'Do you want to take pictures for Comic Relief?' There's no pay. There's one coming up and I don't want to do it. It'll be some celebrity with a red nose on, for their publicity stuff." I said, yeah, that's fine. I'll do that. Thinking portfolio, any celebrity is good for portfolio. So it turned out they phoned me, and it was David Tennant with a red nose on a white seamless studio lights type thing. So I took all the gear to where they were filming Doctor Who, because he was Doctor Who at the time. Set it all up, shot that was fine. A couple of weeks later, they were like, "Oh, we're doing another thing for Comic Relief. We're still not going to pay you. Ronnie Corbett is filming a little 5-minute special of the Sarah Jane Adventures, which is like a children's BBC spin-off of Doctor Who. So we want somebody to shoot the behind-the-scenes stuff on that, and then do the same thing as we did with David Tennant, which is Ronnie Corbett with a red nose, with studio lights and a black backdrop and all that kind of stuff. So I did that. Those both made it to the Radio Times front covers. It was the 21st anniversary of Comic Relief, I think, and they did 21 Radio Times covers with all various different celebrities. So I got 2 covers of that. But the important thing was I met somebody, the guy who was involved from the Doctor Who BBC side of organising that, then said, oh, well, we need a photographer for the Sarah Jane Adventures for the next series. Do you want to do that? I was like, well, what it was, I think he recommended me to the woman who was the picture publicist in London. And then she phoned me and said, oh yeah, do you want to do this unit photography? I was like, yeah, okay, but I haven't got a sound blimp. I knew I needed a sound blimp because you can't shoot the shutter noise during takes. So you have this big plastic box basically full of foam, and you put your camera inside that, and that's how you shoot during takes. I didn't have one. So I said, I haven't got a sound blimp, is that a problem? She said, well, try and get one, but we'll start you off, just shoot rehearsals, take in between.
It was a quick phone call to America then, was it?
Well, no, what it was a quick look on eBay.
Oh, right, okay. You found someone on eBay?
I found one on eBay. They're never on eBay, and it just so happened that there was one on eBay that was fitted my camera, because they're specific to the cameras as well. Of course, yeah. And I was using a Canon 1D Mark II or something. And
on the lens as well, it's depending on
the lenses, You've got to get a lens tube for each different lens. And they're really stupidly expensive as well, but they only made them in America. There was it's a company called Jacobson who made them in Hollywood. Right. Yeah. And they made them. That's the only place you can get them. So I found one on eBay, and I bid on it, and it was going the auction was going to finish 2 days before the first day I was supposed to shoot on this thing. And I think I won the auction, and then I had an email from the guy, and he said, "Oh no, I sold it to I've agreed to sell it to somebody else because he's going to pay me cash and whatever." I said, "Well, I'll pay you cash. I'll drive to London and pay you cash and pick it up tomorrow." "Oh, okay then." So I did that. Drove all the way to Greenwich, picked it up. It was not in a particularly good condition. It was like 400 quid for it or something like that. And that was it. So I had a blimp. So the first day I had a blimp when I got to set, and did the Sarah Jane Adventures. We did 2 series of that. And then Sarah Jane Adventures stopped because Elizabeth Sladen died. So they had to do something else, and they did something called Wizards versus Aliens. Right. Which was kind of the replacement for that. That was more of a Harry Potter meets sci-fi type thing. Can
I jump back a bit?
Yeah.
I'm really interested in. So basically, when you were working for the Echo, you were learning on the job, basically.
Yeah, I didn't do any kind of degree or training or anything. Right, so I did my 3 years working on the student newspaper.
Yes.
Which was good training, to be honest. And a couple of people have left and got jobs as photographers from that.
Right,
it was a really good newspaper. They put a lot of effort in. We used to produce 36 to 48 pages a week.
Yeah, my daughter actually wrote for it.
Guy Reed.
Guy Reed, that's it, yeah.
I have no idea what it's like now. But back then it was really good. And it was always there in about the Student Media Awards with Guardian and stuff.
Right, okay.
So that was my training, really. And then once you start working on a newspaper, you learn really quickly to do anything.
You have to get the picture in the can.
You always have to get a picture, and you never know what you're going to be doing next. And you do everything. You do sport, news, portraits, landscapes sometimes. You're usually taking pictures of people who don't want to have the picture taken for some reason, or they're having their picture taken for there's not that many times when you go and it's like happy reason for having their picture taken. Usually people are in the newspaper because they're annoyed about something. Or
so how did you deal with those situations? Because young, out of college, had experience on a university newspaper, but it's a steep learning curve. I would imagine.
It is, yeah. But the other photographers are brilliant. I mean, this was the thing back then, because everything was shot on film. Photographers would do they had an 8-hour shift. They'd come back an hour or two before the end of the shift, and then the last hour or two of the shift would be putting the films through the processor, editing the strips of negs on a light box, giving them to the lab tech to make prints, captioning the prints. So when you went back at the end of your shift, or when shifts crossed, you would see everybody else's work. It would be all being spewed out the back of the printer,
Yeah.
and all the prints would be there, and you'd see stuff, and you'd talk, and everyone would talk about the jobs, and like, oh, I went on this job, and this happened, and I did this, and let's look at this picture, and so you learn, and you just absorb all this information, you know, like, what do you do when it's too dark and you can't use flash? Can you push this 1600 film to 3200 even though the processor doesn't do it? You know, all this kind of stuff. How do you handle people as well? You know, and that's.
And how do you handle people? So.
Well, again, it varies totally. I mean, I've never really. I think I'm quite common in that I'm quite shy, and having a camera changes that, and also having a big hole in the newspaper waiting for a picture changes that. You have to do something to get a photograph. If it's not going well, you have to figure something out. And because a lot of my shifts as well, because I was working when I did shift work, and it was quite often 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. So the Echo would wrap their stuff up mid afternoon would be the latest you'd be doing anything for the Echo, because it was an evening paper, but the Western Mail was a morning paper, so they would work right through to the 10 o'clock. And quite often they'd be designing the pages for the morning paper before I'd shot the jobs.
Right.
So if there was an award ceremony or a sporting event or something like that, there would be a hole waiting, sometimes on page 1. And like for example, the Western Mail used to run like the Western Mail Business Awards.
Yes.
Which is a big thing for them because they sponsored it and there was a lot of money in it, and you know they made a big deal out of it. It was lots of pre-publicity for it and stuff, and on the night of the Business Awards, then they would do 2 editions. So they'd send me along to shoot a picture for the first edition, which was shot before the awards had even happened, and I had to get a picture of the winner without them knowing they were the winner, to fill that hole in the paper for the first edition.
Right.
And then after the awards had been announced, get another picture, which was them smiling at the camera with their award, for the second edition. And they would actually print the first edition and have it at the awards for people to see.
Oh God, right.
Before they'd even left. So, and that's where you kind of like, well, how am I supposed to get these pictures? So what you'd have to do is go and photograph all the nominees.
Yes.
Equally. And then use the one that was the winner, but you pretend that you were just photographing because they were nominees. So yeah, there's all this stuff like, you know, you've got to figure it out and find a way. And sometimes people are not keen on having the pictures taken. You have to try and persuade them, which I don't like doing, you know.
No. Do you have any theories why people don't like to have their pictures taken?
I don't like having my pictures taken for a start. Probably because I'm a photographer. I mean, that's the best thing about being a photographer is I very rarely have my photos taken. If there's a family event or whatever, I put my hand up to take the pictures. I don't know. I think you're putting yourself out there, aren't you? You're surrendering control a bit to somebody else on what your image is, I suppose. I can totally understand why people don't like it. And that's why when I do have to photograph people who are maybe not that keen or understandably don't want to do it, I try and make it quick and painless, you know. And working on newspapers, it makes you quick at doing stuff as well. You don't often get a lot of time, you know. 10
Indeed,
minutes for a job is,
that's a luxury, I would imagine. 10 minutes for a job sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, quite often you'd have in an 8-hour shift, you'd have 6 or 7 jobs, and they'd all be in various bits of South Wales. So you've got to take into account all the travel time as well. And then the time to process and edit and print everything when you go back.
So how did the 15 years you spent working on newspapers, how did that... obviously, you became... you were practiced at what you did, but the jump then from going to a fairly secure way of earning money... I
wouldn't call it secure.
Well, I mean, fairly secure. Because you were turning up with the goods, so people were going to employ you if you were turning up with the goods.
Yeah.
So how did that then jump from fairly secure living as a photographer to a more precarious one where the jobs are less, there are less jobs going on? Was it that the Red Nose Day free job which actually triggered everything for you?
In a way, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be doing Doctor Who now if I'd said no to doing that original free job. And I think that's one of the things because I'm not very good at being proactive about my career. I don't really have a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan or anything like that. I'm not good at networking and finding clients. I tend to just kind of roll with it, and when things come to me, I take advantage of it. I think it's really important to take advantage of opportunities when they come and do a good job. If someone offers you to do something, you do the best job you can, and hopefully that turns into something else. And I know there are people who say, oh, you should never work for free. It's like a standard thing to say to upcoming photographers, like never work for free, because your pictures are worth something. But you can work for free if it benefits you. And if you know it's going to benefit you in some way, it doesn't matter what the benefit is to the client. If you think you can benefit from it, working free is okay, I think. Yeah. And that was the thing with the David Tennant picture. I wasn't getting paid for it. That picture was worth money to Comic Relief, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. But it was worth it for me because it was another thing for my portfolio and a possible contact that I could make and that kind of.
Did you retain copyright to that photograph?
No. I don't know. Actually, I'm not sure. Possibly. It's on my website anyway. But it's not something you can resell, really. I mean, there's retaining copyright, and then there's making money out of stuff. Yeah. And I've got copyright of lots of pictures that I wouldn't sell, just because it probably doesn't feel right, or it's, morally or ethically not. I mean, I've got copyright to all the wedding work I did, but I'm not going to do anything with any of that other than put it on my website.
It promotes. Yeah, exactly. So going into work in a BBC studio and getting a substantial gig, really.
It's a brilliant gig, and I'm really conscious of the fact that I'm very, very lucky. Yeah. Lots of people would want to do that same job. Because
my recollection, there's I think his name is Tom Hoops, but I may be wrong. But he used to do Doctor Who stuff, and they used to take him down from London because he used to tweet about it and say. But so I never knew that you were the Doctor Who stills photographer.
Well, only for the last 2 series.
Right, okay.
So obviously we're on series 10 is just finished.
Right, okay.
I did series 9 and series 10. So there was somebody else doing it before me.
Right.
But people change jobs, people change what they want to do, so people get bored doing things, and the people who are working at BBC Worldwide constantly changing. So this job came up. So what happened was I was on Wizards vs Aliens, right. And the person who I was working for on Wizards vs Aliens moved to Doctor Who, right. And she recommended me to the person who's in charge of Doctor Who photography at BBC Worldwide. And I just got a call out of the blue. I'm looking for new photographers to work on Doctor Who. Are you interested? I was like, yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And I think initially she said, oh, well, we're going to probably try and get 2 or 3 photographers because it's a big job for one person, and to be relying on one person because if they're not available, because it's all freelance anyway, people got other jobs to do. Work comes in and you can't do something, or you want to go holiday, or... So the initial intention was, we'll get 2 or 3 photographers to right. Have a little group of you.
And what was the first day like?
The first day actually was pretty bad. Obviously, I've been on set before this, so I'd done 3 series of Wizard of Aliens. I'd done Sarah Jane Adventures. I'd done a couple of downstairs.
You knew how a studio worked.
I knew how the studio worked. I knew who was who on set, and because that's really important. Knowing how television is made is one of the most important things about being a photographer. Yeah.
And getting to know the DOP very well.
Yeah, you need to. Yeah, so you. The first AD is most important.
Oh, first AD, yes.
Because they're the one that can kick you off if you're in the way. Yeah. And it's all about not being in the way, which was the problem on day 1. So day 1, Peter Capaldi wasn't filming that day. Jenna Coleman was the companion that day, and it was a scene. They were filming a couple of scenes, and the episode was all set in underwater corridors and this hexagonal room, which had 1 door in and out. There was no way to see in the room from outside it. You were either in the room or you weren't in the room, and it was tiny. So by the time there was 2 cameras, 4 actors, sound, ADs, camera assistants, all in this room, there wasn't room for me. I spent the first 5 hours sitting watching it on a telly outside. But fortunately, my client was there and could see the situation, and has been doing it long enough to know that that's just the way it is, Yeah. So it wasn't the kind of like, you have to get pictures type thing. It was like, well, this is a situation. She's like, fine, okay. We'll wait it out. And there was some corridor stuff later on. I did get some pictures. But yeah, it wasn't a great start. And And it's really frustrating when you know that there are good pictures happening and you can't take them. But I think one of the most important things about being a unit photographer is understanding that I'm like the least important person there.
Yes.
I'm not making the show. And everybody else there is aware of the fact that I don't really need to be there for there to be a Doctor Who shoot.
Yes.
You know,
I
the show will happen
yeah.
without me being there at all. No one will notice if I'm not there. If I don't turn up on a day I'm supposed to be there, no one will care. I am this kind of like department of one. You know, you have the camera department, you have the lighting department, you have the sound department, you have costume, makeup, actors, ADs, and there's me on my own.
Yes.
And I operate as kind of like a one-man band. Yeah, it's a tricky job because you have to be like as close to the camera as you can get most of the time, which without being in the way, and that's the skill.
Very
I think it's not a particularly difficult thing to take pictures of really great sets and people in amazing costumes who look great, doing exciting things.
Yeah,
the stuff's all there.
Yeah,
the skill is actually being able to be in the room where you need to be and take those pictures without getting in people's way, without making a noise, without tripping over cables, bumping the camera.
Yeah.
Being in an actor's eye line, all these things come before being able to take the photograph, you know. And then it's all about trying to find a frame that is interesting and tells the story of that scene, but getting that frame without there being a light stand in the back or a boom mic in the top or the edge of a camera inside of your frame. You know, you need to be able to find that.
Yeah.
Because there's stuff everywhere.
Indeed.
So there's like a light stand just out the frame here and a boom mic just out the frame here and a little bit of cable running across the floor in the corner there. Yeah. So I became super aware of everything that was all the way to the edges, which previously I hadn't. I was a bit slapdash with that kind of thing. Yeah. So being a newspaper photographer, slapdash about everything. That was something as well, because you have to look, because if you do get a bit of cable in an awkward place in the back, you can't use the picture at all, you know, because if I can't quickly retouch it out, they're probably not going to bother retouching it out. Plus, also, I have to be careful if I send them stuff with problems in it, because sometimes they won't catch it. So
they won't,
because they
idiot.
Yeah. So I mean, it's that whole. You know, remember the water bottle with Downton Abbey? There's a press shot, a set-up press shot, portrait lighting and everything else. They're stood in front of a fireplace in character, Downton Abbey, and there's a water bottle on the mantelpiece behind them. And everyone's like, oh, how could the photographer do that? That's outrageous. But I know exactly how that happened. It was 2-minute shoot. Yeah. They set everything up. They came in. Photographers shooting before they've even stopped moving. Bang, 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 bang. Someone's put a water bottle down at the last minute just before that, and he hasn't noticed. Bang, 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 bang. Thank you very much, and away.
And it's very easy to happen.
10 people saw that picture before it was released, and no one spotted the water bottle. They could have taken that out in 2 seconds. It's not the photographer's fault. It's, you know,
down the line.
If I was shooting that and I saw the water bottle there, I wouldn't have bothered stopping. I would have just carried on, because if you're given 2 minutes,
that's all you've got.
You've got to get it on that 2 minutes, and the water bottle can stay there and be sorted out later. If I see stuff that I know can be sorted out later, then I'll just go, leave it. We'll just, because sometimes costume will whisper in your ear, oh, you know, there's a bit of mark there. I'll just say leave it. We'll do it later. Yeah. Because it'll take them 10 minutes to go in and rub it out in real life, and it'll take me 30 seconds in Photoshop.
If my ex-partner, she was a wardrobe. And she was great, and she used to do Polaroids, and some of her Polaroid shots are just magnificent. Really. Do you know that lovely quality of the old Polaroids? Yeah. Where I mean, she's got some Claire Bloom, for example, and it is a beautiful shot of Claire Bloom, you know. And
costume quite often have that relationship with actors. That
they do,
a much more
close,
personal relationship than anybody else on set, because they see them first thing in the morning and they dress them, and they see them last thing at night.
So there's obviously something going on, you know, because, you know, if you're doing portraiture, what I find with doing portraiture, I just shot a book cover, and it's getting to know the people, and even in a short space of time, you can feel people, can't you? You know how they are.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. When I shoot the TV stuff, you literally get them for a couple of minutes, and you've kind of got to figure out within that couple of minutes what they're happy doing and what they're not happy doing, whether they think they've got a good side and a bad side, because some people do, even though they haven't. You know, some people think they've got one side better than the other, but you still need to photograph both sides, because you need them looking left and right. So yeah, you don't really get a chance to build a relationship or find out, about
but
them.
within that small period of time you have, because it was, I think it was Eisenstadt said you have to click with a person before you click the camera, and I think there's a huge element of truth in that, especially if you're dealing with people, especially doing portraiture. That's it, where you have time and to build some sort of relationship with people and have an understanding of how they want themselves portrayed as well,
Yeah,
because,
I mean, with TV it's a little bit different because they're not themselves.
No, indeed.
They're a character, so
Indeed.
they have to, instead of being themselves and you getting to know them as a person, you need to know their character.
Indeed.
And they need to know their character so that they can project that in the photo. So one of the first things I'll say to people, because quite often I might photograph them on a white background as a one-on-one thing before I've seen them do any acting. So I have to say to them, what is your character like? What do you do what you think is right for your character. You be your character, and I'll just take pictures because I can't direct them.
No.
I can't say look angry or look this way or look that way because that might not be right for their character. So you have to kind of trust them to do what is appropriate,
what they've discussed,
and that's their job.
Yeah.
is acting. So you have to trust them to do. You can't tell them, oh no, I don't like it like that. Do it like this, because they kind of have to know.
Yeah. On set, you have all these professional people around you, wardrobe, makeup, everybody's taking photographs actually. Well, makeup.
They're not supposed to. No personal photographs on set.
No, yeah, but they are taking.
But the continuity.
Continuity and stuff.
Yes.
So all that's going on.
Yeah.
And do you talk to other people about your work? I mean, do you have time to talk? I've talked to cameramen before, and they have an interest in stills photography.
Some of them do, yeah. Some of the DOPs sometimes, sometimes a DOP will walk in with a better camera than what I got.
Does that piss you off?
Well, no, it's fine. But yeah, it's quite frustrating when you see Peter Capaldi's actually quite a keen photographer, and he takes pictures on set sometimes. And it's quite frustrating to see him taking pictures that I can't take because he can do what he wants. He can walk up to any other guest actor and go, "Oh, pose there and take this picture," and I can't do that. So that can be quite frustrating. But yeah, you get some crew who are like, "Oh, what camera's that? What you're using? And yeah, most people do it as a hobby at some point. Even if it's just with their phone. You get camera assistants and stuff who are interested in the more technical kind of like gear type side of things because that's their job is technical. But there's some actors as well that's like, oh yeah, I do pictures. What's the camera you're using? Oh yeah, that, and then I have a little bit of a chat with you, but not that often, and you don't get a chance for in-depth chats. So it doesn't get to the kind of like how many megapixels is yours type level of conversation very often. But yeah, I learn a lot from watching other people because and the other thing that I think is important to say is that it's such a collaborative. Making a TV show is such a collaborative thing, and some of my pictures look amazing, and I look at them and think that's amazing, but a lot of why it's amazing is nothing to do with me. It's the set design and the art department and the costume department and the makeup and the actors themselves, and the DOP has lit it beautifully, and that's why the picture looks amazing. And I'm just recording what is in front of me. It's more of a documentary thing, and if it wasn't for all of those other people, my pictures would be nothing. You have to appreciate that, and that's one of the reasons why I don't have a problem with me not owning the copyright, because when you do TV and film stuff, generally the production company will own the copyright. But because I've not had much creative input, I don't feel like they're my pictures creatively. I think a lot of the creative work is done by other people. I think it's fine for them to own the copyright. I don't really have an issue with that, because I'm just really thankful that all that stuff is there in front of me to photograph. You do your white background shoot of one of these amazing monsters with prosthetics and everything, and you see the prosthetics people working, and the makeup and the costumes and they make like giant robots, and it's amazing what they do, and you look at it really close up, and it's amazing. It's not just amazing on TV; it's amazing in real life close up. It looks incredible, and that's why the pictures look good, because of them. So. Yeah, I think you can get a bit precious about copyright. I think they're just as entitled to copyright those pictures as I am.
The other thing I wanted to ask you really was, we talked before we started recording about that you'd been to talk to students about your work. How do you see that whole area? And because, you learnt on the job. And you gave yourself to work on the student newspaper, which then led to sending stuff into the South Wales Echo, and then that exploding and becoming work and more work and more work.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to these kids who are coming out of university now with their BAs in photography? Is that
It's difficult because I've never done any education. I don't really know what education is providing them. I'm sure they're learning useful stuff, but I think there's certainly no need to go to university, I don't think, in order to do it for a living. I think if you ask probably the vast majority of professionals who are well-known professionals now, they probably didn't go to university. Or they did, but they didn't do photography. And maybe that's the most important thing. You get a grounding, you get an education and a grounding in something you're interested in, and then you take that and you apply it to your photography. And lots of people who are doing personal work that is based on their main interest. They're not like the wildlife photographer is a typical one, isn't it? Like wildlife photographers are really interested in wildlife, and they take pictures of it. You can't just be a wildlife photographer because you've got lots of cameras.
No.
So I think I'm kind of more on the technical side. It's not like my photography is coming from an underlying interest. My photography is more of a commercial, editorial.
And does your electronic training click in? Because obviously kit doesn't worry you because you have.
It definitely helped in the early stages. Yeah, I mean the transition to digital was quite difficult because you basically went from put a roll of film in the back of a camera, then go back to the office and give it to somebody else, to doing everything yourself. And for a lot of photographers who'd been doing it for like 30 years already, film, suddenly they've got a laptop and a mobile phone and flashcards, and they're having to load the flashcard onto their laptop, edit through on screen, caption them, do basic colour adjustments, send them on a mobile phone back to the office, that sort of stuff. I mean, obviously I had a background in computers and electronics, and that stuff wasn't a problem for me. I already knew the technology was fine.
Yeah.
So for the transition, definitely it helped. I mean, I think there's nobody now that really has a problem. It's got a lot simpler as well. You don't have to use special cards to send stuff off laptops. You just Wi-Fi hotspots and all this kind of stuff. But it's just kind of like ingrained in everything now, isn't it? Everybody's got a smartphone. Everybody knows about email and
the speed of it, though, to be able to cope with the speed of having to deliver material. There's a very good photographer I know, Alan Llewellyn. He works in West Wales. He does sport. He does everything really, and part of an agency. But he's able to wire stuff almost as soon as he's taken a photograph.
Yeah, I mean that's all that really the newspapers care about now, isn't it? Is getting it first. It doesn't have to be good or accurate. They just want it first. That's usually the news story thing, isn't it? It's like first, and then we'll figure out what the problems are later and change it. But yeah, speed is everything with news. Because of the internet. It didn't matter when it was newspapers, as long as you got it in before the edition went to press, that was fine.
Yeah.
But now they're constantly updating the websites, so they need the stuff as soon as you can send it. And I know people who are still working on newspapers now. That's the thing. They're shooting a job and then they're sitting in the car and sending it before they go to the next job. Yeah. Whereas when I was doing it, you would shoot all day and send all your stuff at the end of the day.
Yeah. So more pressure on press photographers.
Definitely, yeah. And especially, and they've got to shoot video as well, and there's definitely more pressure. I don't know whether I would want to do it now. I mean, I probably would if I wasn't doing this. No. But it's definitely a different job. It's weird because when I was starting out, people, you got older photographers reminiscing about the days when they used to shoot medium format and on manual focus cameras, and now I'm here reminiscing about the days when I used to shoot just normal digital cameras. Yeah, it's quite, and it's moving so quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see a point where for press stuff, stills cameras will become redundant, and they will just take video grabs.
I agree.
It doesn't work for TV yet because the cameras still can't do high resolution without the motion blur.
Yeah.
So because the cameras shoot at 24 frames a second, anything that's moving is blurry, which is how TV works. So you can't just take a grab of that and use that as your still for promotional purposes, because it's a bit blurry and it's not that high resolution. Even a HD camera is only 2 megapixels. Still is 2 megapixels of a HD camera, I think, which is not big enough to blow up into posters and all that.
No, indeed, no. So were you given scripts or anything? Did you know what was...
I get scripts for Doctor Who. I didn't
Right.
used to get scripts for others. Doctor Who's a little bit different. There's more budget, there's more time, there's more... there are loads more uses for the pictures. The pictures go everywhere. So they just need lots and lots and lots of stuff.
So on an average day, how much would you be shooting?
Well, I mean, on an average day, they might shoot about 5 or 6 pages of script.
Yeah.
So maybe only 4 or 5 scenes. Sometimes it's all in the same room all day, and all your pictures are quite similar. Other days, there's lots of variety, and you can get more. But I mean, I'll shoot anything from 500 to 1,000 frames, and deliver maybe 50 to 100 out of that. And then maybe 4 of them will actually see the light of day. Do you know what I mean? It's because after everything's been signed off and approved, and actors get approval as well, and then there's some of it might get retouched if there's stuff that is not quite right. And
would you be involved in that then, or
No.
is that different?
So I will deliver my 50 or 100 pictures, and then they're completely out of my hands then.
Okay.
I don't know what's going to get used until...
Do you deliver
they
the
get
raw
released.
then, or is it... do you
Both.
drift? Both.
So for that, I do... I deliver the raws, and I do my own, I'll colour correct and contrast and colour, like the basic stuff. I don't retouch things. I don't change what the picture is of. If there's a boom mic in that I can take out really easily, I might take it out of the top of the frame. Or if there's sometimes you get the actors' marks by their feet.
Yes.
They're quite easy to remove.
Yeah.
But generally, I'm trying to frame it without any of that stuff in, so it doesn't need any retouching, just for speed.
Do they? Do you do stuff then that is specifically set up? Because I've been on film set and where I shot the action, and then was specifically asked to do setups. Then does that happen with you?
So, I mean, it splits into there's basically 4 areas of photography that I do. So you've got being on the set while they're filming and catching the action while they're filming it. Behind the scenes pictures, so pictures of crew working, people having their makeup done, all that kind of stuff as well. They like that. And then there's 2 lots of setups. So we do almost all of the speaking characters. We do seamless white background studio lights.
Yep.
And we do them in various poses and in character. Those can then be used either just released as they are, or they can be used in composites against backplates, and they'll build up pictures with various characters. You can't get all the characters in one go. Very rarely are they available. So we're picking characters who are free in between takes or in between scenes, because you can't just grab them, put them over there and take a picture, because they have to be checked by costume and makeup as well before you can do it.
Right. Yeah, there must be a lot of bureaucracy surrounding, especially with an iconic series like Doctor
Everything
Who.
has to be right, I mean, and then the 4th thing we do is what they call the iconics. So for every episode, there's one big setup picture to represent that episode. And usually, if we can, we do that on set. Lights, assistant, shoot tethered into a laptop, all that kind of stuff. We'll have costume makeup there. Quite often you've got prosthetics people as well that are involved. And those are quite a big thing to set up, because finding a bit of set that is free for long enough for us to do a pre-light, and because we'll pre-light it and test and everything else, and we'll have the actors for maybe 15 minutes if we're lucky, and then they go away again. So that's quite stressful and high pressure, but I quite like doing those, because that's when I can be a little bit more creative, because I'm kind of given the set to do with as I please, and you can work with the actors, and they can figure out their poses and think up something that isn't directly part of the story.
And what sort of relationship did you build with the actors? Because you worked on 2 series, so you were, you're working on, I don't know how many episodes they make, but 12 episodes.
12 episodes per series plus a Christmas special.
So you get to know the actors quite well then,
Yeah, I mean, you don't... A lot of the actors come in just for one episode. So the guest actors you kind of like see briefly, and then they're gone again, and then there's a new lot of guest actors, so you don't really get to know them that well. Peter Capaldi was really nice, very professional. He knows exactly what's needed. When you want him in character, he is the Doctor.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do. But what I don't tend to do is try. You don't get to be kind of like pally with them off set. Do you know what I mean?
No.
They're off doing their own
It's
thing.
a
They're learning their
job.
lines. They're either in their trailer learning lines or they're getting in costume or whatever. So you only really see them on set. And there are so many people and it's so high pressured and there's never enough time to film what they need to film. They're always up against time. So there aren't really those times when you can sit and have it. You barely get a chance to chat to the crew, never mind the actors. So, I mean, it's nice when you get an actor who is understanding of what the stills photographer needs and doesn't, protest about having some actors don't like stills photographers on set. They're a
Yes,
distraction.
I've met one.
Yeah.
And he was horrible.
And then it's difficult. But Peter was always fine. And also with eye lines as well. He was never a problem with eye lines because some actors are more sensitive to a camera being in their eye line than others.
Of course.
So yeah, it was absolutely fine. And that's the difficult thing with having guest actors each episode. Is you don't know where that line is with actors because they're new each time.
Of course.
So every time you're on set with new people, you kind of have to start gentle and push the boundaries a little bit until you know what it kind of. Because the last thing you want to do is upset anybody.
Indeed.
Because if I upset somebody important, I'm probably never going to work on it again.
Yeah.
So you've got to kind of like be aware of where that line is and not overstep it.
Yeah.
Partly with the crew, but the crew are great. But definitely with the actors. It's not, and one of the other things, the crew is mostly the same from the 2 series of Doctor Who I've done as well. So you come back and it's the same crew and they already know you, and it's like, yeah. I can trust you to stand 6 inches from my camera during a take because I know you're not going to bump into it because you've done it before. I think, I've heard stories of some photographers who've gone on set and made a nuisance of themselves and production have turned around and said, never send them again. Yeah. We don't want that person on our set again, and I think that's mostly what the job is just being able to get on with everybody, get what you need, get out, not be in the way, not be a nuisance. Yeah. It's kind of, that's all it is really. It's not a complicated photographic job. Yeah. The lighting's done for you.
Right. So would you regard yourself now as a photographer that works exclusively in the medium of television?
No, not at all. No.
Because
that job could disappear tomorrow and I'd have to find someone else to do it.
Cool. So, but what gives you pleasure from... you must do personal work.
Well, you say that. I'm terrible with personal work. I just can't get going on projects and stuff. I have ideas and have ideas when I'm not busy, and then when I think about them and then I get busy and I put those ideas just disappear again. Do you know? Okay. And I'm really bad at carrying. I've not got a camera with me today. I'm really bad at carrying a camera wherever I go. You know, I can't can't get into the habit of that.
But do you have any ambition?
I like portraiture is the other thing that I like doing. So there is some portraiture work involved with doing the telly because I do the seamless white background stuff, and that's portrait work, and then the iconics are partly portraiture. Yeah. But I also do that for kind of like corporate and commercial clients and stuff as well. And I enjoy that kind of like not so much. I mean, I'm happy to do studio stuff, but I quite like taking lights out on location and setting stuff up, using the location and using lighting and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I'd like to do more portraiture, more editorial style portraiture. It's just finding clients that want to book you to do it. It's always the way.
From a technical point of view, how, because developments are happening all the time and cameras are changing all the time, and now you almost don't need to have a blimp anymore. You have
Sony A9. It's on my shopping list. It's very expensive though.
It is very expensive.
I've had a Fuji X-T1 for the last couple of years,
right,
which has a silent mode, and it's great when you can use it. But the problem with electronic shutters up until now has been the flickering banding effect you get with various light sources.
Yes.
And with TV, they use all different kinds of lights. They use HMIs and tungstens and LEDs and fluorescents and all sorts. And they quite often mix them all up. So you never know what is being used on set. You have to go around and have a look and see what actually is lighting the setup. Yeah. And so there are lots of situations where those electronic shutters don't work. Especially if you've got something that's moving, you need to freeze action. You want to use a higher shutter speed, but you can't because then you get black lines through your picture. So I still need the blimps. The Sony A9 on paper looks to have solved that problem. And I know there are lots of other unit photographers who've at least got a mirrorless camera alongside blimps. And I'm going to hire one before the next series starts to test it.
Yeah.
And probably get one of those soon. But yeah, $4,500 for a mirrorless camera is ridiculous. But yeah, technology is changing that quite rapidly, and that'll be another thing that's kind of like a leveling of the playing field again. You know, if you don't have to have an expensive blimp, because the blimps are like $2,000.
$2,000, yeah, they're expensive.
For one blimp and a couple of tubes, and I've got 2 cameras, I need 2 blimps, because changing the tubes between takes is a pain in the arse. It's 5 minutes of unscrewing things and taking it all apart and putting it all back together again. So mirrorless cameras on paper look brilliant, and if I can get away with having a couple of Sony A9s and a couple of Zooms, that's great, because I also have to stand around for 12 hours a day with them on my shoulders.
Indeed.
And those blimps are really heavy.
Yeah.
So anything that makes that easier would be nice.
Are you tempted at all to flip the switch to video and video some stuff?
Not when I'm on set. I know it's something that photographers are supposed to be doing now, shooting video. Everyone's supposed to be shooting video. It's supposed to be more and more important. The internet likes video. I don't have a massive interest in shooting video. I have more interest now than I did before I started doing TV work, and I can see the skill and what's involved in shooting it. And obviously, I've got more of an idea on how you would construct a scene and shoot it from when you shoot a master, and then you go in tight, and then you shoot the reverse angle and all this kind of stuff, and how you would edit it together. And that's just something you pick up as you're standing there watching them do it. But no, I mean, quite often when I'm there, there's a behind the scenes team filming as well, because they film stuff for DVD extras and the internet, and they film.
So you've got to avoid those as well.
So they're quite often there shooting video on top of the show, shooting their own video. So there's no real place for me to shoot video. I did. There's a possibility we might start doing little bits of video when we shoot the white background, like almost like video portraits. So just a little bit of movement.
So just a little bit of that.
Yeah, and or kind of like not the same way, but you know when they shoot all these sports people, and instead of just showing a headshot, they have them walk towards the camera and fold their arms.
Yeah,
which is really cheesy, and everyone does exactly the same thing. It's stupid, but that kind of thing where it's a moving portrait rather than a completely still portrait is possibly something we might do.
Is that in your control, or is that something they would ask you to do?
It's something they would ask me to do. I could suggest it if I wanted to, and if they didn't like it, they would just say, "Oh, don't bother." You know, because the other thing is it's a small amount of time.
Yeah,
you only do it if you get the time. The priority is always to get what they need, which is at the moment is the stills. But if at some point they said, "Oh yeah, we really need to get video as well," then we would have to try and build that in and make the time for it. And for commercial and corporate stuff, I know there's a lot of interest in getting video now. I think what I don't want to do is do it badly, and I think a lot of people just kind of like, "Oh, well, my camera does video, I'll do a little bit of video," but it's bad video.
Yeah,
indeed. And quite often the most important thing about video is the sound as well.
Yes.
And if you do good video and bad sound, it's still bad video. There's no point. Yeah. I feel like I probably picked up some skills from watching stuff, but I've not done it yet. Do you know what I mean? And no one's really asked me to do it yet.
Yeah. What's competition like?
I have no idea. I don't know who else does it. I don't.
Well, the only other guy I know who does it around in South Wales is Warren Orchard.
Yes, no, I've heard of Warren. I've never met Warren. I'm aware he does it. I don't know. I don't think there are that many people doing it as a kind of like almost full-time thing. They're not that many people who specialise in it. And it's like anything else. It's who you know. And I wouldn't be doing it unless I knew the person who did Sarah Jane Adventures of Wizards and then moved to Doctor Who, knows the person who does, it's that thing. It's the snowball effect. You do one job and it turns into lots of jobs.
Yeah, and the trust thing, of course, is...
And trust, yeah. And that's the thing that's been explained to me. It's like, we could try a new photographer, but we have to trust them not to mess it up.
Yes.
Before we can send them on big jobs. So you have to start on smaller things. I've had a couple of assistants who are like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to do this." But, how do you start? It's difficult. I don't know how I would start. If I was coming from scratch, I don't know how I would start. I suppose it's, if you do go through the university process and you meet people who are making short films, meet student filmmakers and get on their short films and shoot, and you start that way. And then you move up as they move up. But to break into something like Doctor Who from scratch would be almost impossible. I think they can't send, however good their pictures are, they have to know that they're going to be able to be on a set where they're spending huge amounts of money every day to make and not cause problems.
Yes, it's being almost unnoticed, almost.
Yeah,
isn't it?
you'd be invisible.
Invisible. Yeah.
Get all these pictures, but make sure nobody notices you doing them. I actually had an actor. Quite often, what happens is we start on a new episode, and I don't get a chance to introduce myself to some of the actors. So I'll be there taking pictures, and I think I'd done like 2 or 3 days on set with this particular actor, and then we did our white background session. And that was the first time I'd introduced myself. I said, "Oh, hi, I'm Simon. I'm the stills photographer. You probably noticed me around on set taking pictures." "Oh no, I hadn't seen you," she said. I didn't. So that's brilliant. That's perfect. I'm doing my job properly.
Yeah.
But I've been there 3 days, 12 hours a day, standing, 6 feet from her, taking pictures of her all the time,
right.
and she hadn't even noticed I was there.
Right.
And I find that hard to believe, but if that's the case, then that's great. But yeah, it's that's the skill, I think, is just being able to be invisible and not. And you have to I think photographers are used to being the centre of attention and having control over things, and you have to appreciate that you're not the centre of attention, and take a step back and get stuff when you can get it, and not force it, not like don't panic if you go 3 hours and you haven't taken a picture yet. You just have to accept it. I've sat in front of Video Village watching the monitors for hours before taking my first pictures of the day. And
so do you go out on location as well with them?
Yeah. So everywhere, and sometimes abroad. Occasionally, they'll go abroad for a week and shoot in a weird landscape.
So you're hired to do Doctor Who. So how many days do you do during a week?
It varies. I think it's usually around about 10 days per block. So a block is about 4 or 5 weeks. So it's 2 to 3 days a week it works out at. But it could be 5 days one week and nothing the next week. It totally depends on what they're filming that day, because what they do is go through the scenes. As soon as the schedule comes out, they'll go through each day, which scenes have been filmed which day, which actors are in those scenes, which sets they're on, all that kind of stuff, and try and figure out which days are the best to send me. Because if it is a day when they're in a little box with no windows all day and there's not going to be room for me in there, then they won't send me. It's not worth it. It's pointless me sitting on my backside all day doing nothing. So they'll discuss it with the ADs and the production manager and locations people and set people and stuff, and have a look and see which are the best days to send me. And obviously within that, then they're also trying to get coverage of all of the main actors, all of the important scenes, all of the different locations. So they've got at least one day on this location and a day on this location and a day on this location. And they've got this actor and this actor and this actor. So they've got all the variety that they need to tell the story, which is difficult sometimes, because sometimes you see a set and most of the episode happens on that set and the set is not good for stills.
Yeah, I mean, I was involved with, they did, it was the 40th anniversary of Public.com.
Oh yeah.
And I did the book, because they were bringing out a book. That was an interesting, because I was kind of allowed on set all the time. There was it's
great, that studio, isn't it?
Yes,
with all the various little rooms off,
amazing.
It's like one corridor and then all the rooms off. You're at the pub next to someone's living room and then a bedroom. And
what I found amazing was all the letters and things,
Yeah, the detail is incredible.
The detail is amazing.
I mean, it's the same with Doctor Who. The art department's amazing, because you go into these space. They built a spaceship. Great, it's a spaceship. It looks like a spaceship, great. But then there'll be like the engineering department, and there's all these little nuts and bolts and little sci-fi symbols on everything, and it's the thought that goes into it is incredible.
So do you shoot detail like that as well?
Yes, sometimes. Yeah, I mean, if there's interesting stuff, props, we shoot all the props on white backgrounds as well for later on, because it's not just like most of what I'm thinking about when I'm shooting is there's magazines and newspapers. There's Doctor Who magazine, for example, uses tons of pictures, and then there's all the newspapers and magazines and internet sites that review each episode and need stills for that, and then there's pre-publicity, but also there's merchandise. They need, if they sell an action figure, there needs to be photos on the box of the action figure. Right. So all that stuff. It's so many pictures. How
do you go shooting a Dalek then? I mean, this really intrigues me. How do you shoot a Dalek? Because he's not going to give you anything, is he? As a Dalek? He's not going to smile.
Yeah,
you know
we
what I mean?
basically put him on a white background and just turn him around bit by bit and take all the angles. Yeah, there's not a lot you can do with the Dalek.
You know, a Cyberman, you can do something with a Cyberman.
Yeah, well, we
I
had
guess.
3 different kinds of Cybermen at the end of the most recent series. That was interesting.
And what was it, from just sort of a cheesy question, your favourite character that you've had to do in Doctor Who?
What, like alien monster type character or character?
Well, the alien type monster. We'll do both.
Let me think. The Cybermen were really good. What was interesting about it, because I'm not a Doctor Who fan, I don't have any backstory with Doctor Who. I haven't, I don't know the ins and outs of the whole timeline stuff. I've watched it over the years, and I watch it now out of professional interest because I want to see the show that I was working on.
Yeah.
But they did this thing with the Cybermen at the end of the last series where they explained the genesis of the Cybermen and how they changed over time from one character. So they had 3 different versions of Cybermen as they got more modern. So that was interesting. In terms of like human characters, Michelle Gomez is hilarious.
Okay.
She's quite difficult to photograph, but she gives you all these pictures. It's brilliant. You don't have to do anything. She just stands there and she's bonkers. She will give you all these amazing poses. But I'm laughing most of the time. She's really funny. So that was towards the end of this series. Oh, she's been in kind of like throughout the last series, but the big story was at the end.
Yeah.
But then you get like robots and the weird thing is quite often you forget that there's a person inside these things. So you see them on set and they've got their heads on and they're in these big costumes. And you photograph them and you kind of walk up to them and just take pictures of them like this. And you forget, it's like, there's somebody in there. You forget to say hello, And then you see them walking down a corridor later when they're out their costume on. You have no idea who they are. They go, hello, and who are you? Oh, I was inside that, that big green thing.
So has working with on a set and DOPs, getting to know DOPs, has that changed, or how has that informed the way you perceive lighting?
Massively. Yeah. I've learned a lot from watching DOPs. It's really interesting. I quite often, there's loads of waiting around on set for me. Some people like the camera team and the lighting team are quite often busy, but I'm only really shooting when stuff's happening, when they're filming or rehearsals. So there's a lot of waiting around, and I spend a lot of that time watching them set lights up and seeing how they do. Why is there a gel on that light when you can't really see the effect on screen, and why are they using fluorescence for that and HMIs for that and LEDs for that and flagging stuff off and scrims and nets and they've got so many tools, and it would be lovely for me to turn up on a photo shoot with 2 trucks full of equipment, but it doesn't happen. So you have to kind of translate that into a much smaller kit. But yeah, watching how TV and film is lit is really interesting. And one of the things I've noticed is everything is predominantly backlit with film. Whereas I probably previously would have shot, the typical 45-degree softbox up here. Well, I've changed the way I shoot my white background stills to be more shadow on the front of the face and be more side lit and backlit.
Okay, cool.
More to match what they're filming, but also I think it does look better. I'm not sure why, but it does.
Yeah.
More modelling on the face and stuff.
Yeah.
And but you see like the amount of time. I mean, not in terms of they don't spend like an hour setting up a scene. They haven't got that amount of time. They're really quick at doing it, but they put a lot of effort into getting it just right. It's like move that light 6 inches to the left, bring it up a tiny bit, put a flag in front of it, soften it a little bit by here, and it translates to this amazing. But they can do it really quickly.
So the expertise and how you're talking about working on set are wonderful, and it is a skill set which not many people and not many photographers have. Where would you? I
didn't have it when I started.
No.
The first day I walked on set, I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
I dispute that, Simon.
Because I've never been on a set before.
Right. Okay. So you've never been on any sort of.
No, I mean I've been on when working for newspapers. I'd been on I've been on sets like things like Question Time and the sort of things that would be in a newspaper. Do you know what I mean? Like TV shows, studio audience, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Never been on a drama set.
Right. Okay.
Which is completely different.
Yeah.
So the first time I was ever on a set proper was that rehearsal, shooting rehearsals of the Ronnie Corbett, Sarah Jane Adventures thing.
Yes.
When I didn't have a blimp, and I was just kind of like hanging back. I didn't know what was going on. I was just absorbing all of this stuff, watching everything that was happening and trying to figure out I didn't know the difference between the first AD and the second AD and the third AD, or the and what their various jobs were. I didn't appreciate I didn't even realise that the reason that everyone was sat watching monitors in the corner of the room was because costume and makeup have to watch what's being filmed to make sure that everything looks right, because then they can change it for the next take. I thought they were just watching it because they had nothing else to do. I had no idea what was going on. So that was...
You were an innocent abroad.
Yeah, and so it's just about kind of like watching and taking note of everything and just absorbing all of this stuff. And the more you do it, the more you pick up. And I've just been doing it long enough now that I know...
Do you think
if I've got a question, I know whether to ask the first AD or the third AD or the runner.
Yes.
Not bother the first AD with an unimportant question that the runner could answer.
Indeed.
All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's just by being there a lot.
Yeah.
No one's told me anything.
Yeah.
There's no training for it.
No. The only way I knew about when I've done some photography for SOC and shot some stuff for magazines to show a show being made, but I'd been on a set before. I knew the structure and how it all worked, and getting to know that, as you just said, knowing a runner is really quite interesting, and because they can give you information as well that you don't need to bother other people with.
Yes.
But I had a really bad experience on a set where it was night shoot. It was dark, really terribly lit from a stills point of view. And you really are up against it sometimes, and there were a lot of guns and stuff going off, and monsters and things. So I found that really hard, and I found working with an actor when we did a setup, he really didn't want to be there.
No, and that's the thing. Some actors are not interested in stills at all.
No,
other ones are fine and know exactly what to do. Like you put them in front of a camera and they'll just do a whole load of poses without you having to say anything.
Yeah.
And others you have to specifically say, can you move your head a little bit to the left? Can you rate,
Yeah. Well, I did that.
Exactly.
I did that on set, and the actor came up to me and said, "What's my motivation?"
Yeah. But it's not, this is the thing, like you can laugh at that, but it's not that stupid a question. Like, because they're actors and they need to know why they're doing something. I think that's quite important. With a lot of actors, they kind of, if you just stand them there, they're like, well, what am I doing in this picture? What's the and because the picture's trying to tell a story.
Indeed.
So unless the actor knows what story they're telling, is there somebody chasing? Like for Doctor Who, it's like there's someone chasing you down a corridor, look kind of like over your shoulder, like kind of like scared, or you're the kind of like you're the one with the gun. You got to look hard and aggressive. Or
exactly.
You're a monster. You've got to kind of like do the monster pose. There's all this kind of stuff, but they need to know why they're doing it. Like, and also because a lot of those white background pictures are used for comps.
Yes.
So they're going to be used next to another character.
Yes.
So you need to say, well, you need to imagine that this person's standing here and you're looking at them.
Yeah.
Or this person is over here and they're chasing you. Or you need to tell them why they're doing... Tell them just to look left, look right, look up in the air. It doesn't really work for some people. They kind of need to have a bit more backstory to why they're doing something.
Well, I did tell him. He wasn't that impressed.
No, I mean...
it's like handling a gun. He'd been shooting. We'd done stuff. I'd been there the previous night, and there was lots of action. So he knew how to use a rifle, and with a sight on it and stuff. And all I wanted to do was to have that aggression and feel that aggression. And but he was really not playing ball.
Why? Why am I being aggressive about it? Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely the case that some are easier to work with than others. And some take a lot more direction than others.
Yeah. And
some people, you just get what you get, and you think, well, that's it. I'm not going to get anything else.
Move on.
Move on. You know, and you don't get them very long either. So when we do the white background shoots, we generally get them for like 5 or 10 minutes if we're lucky.
Yeah.
There's usually a runner standing next to me with a radio.
Yeah.
Who will suddenly go, right, that's it. They needed back, you know. And if whatever you haven't got, you haven't got.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we try and ask for 10 minutes, and if we get 10 minutes, that's great. But I can usually get what I need in about 3.
Right. So how often do you employ an assistant then?
For those, so usually for the white backgrounds and for the iconics, which are bigger setup days. So when I'm bringing lights, basically, I don't bring any lights or anything to set unless we're doing those setups. So because obviously I can't use flash on set or anything like that.
No,
we don't. Very occasionally, if there's something that we need to get that we can't set up because they're using the set or because there just isn't time, we will occasionally ask for time during filming for me to step in. So they'll film a scene and I'll ask them to hold what they're doing and I'll step in, shoot a few frames. Everybody's waiting at that point. So nothing, you know, I'm holding things up. So that has to be really quick.
Yes.
I have to know exactly what I want, exactly what I want them to do and get it in about 60 seconds and get out again. Yeah. Or it's just, they're not going to give me the chance the next time. No. So that's rare though. We try not to do that if we can get away with it.
So, I've seen the Doctor Who stuff you've done, and really lovely, beautifully shot stuff. Has your work doing those 2 series led on to other work which you've, or other film work or other series?
I'm trying to make that happen. Not yet. I mean,
or are you known as the Doctor Who photographer now?
Well, I don't really want to be known as the Doctor Who photographer. There are a couple of other guys. If I'm not free, there are a couple of other guys that come in sometimes and do stuff. There's a couple of other people that do some of the big iconic setup stuff. Is shot in London sometimes, and sometimes they'll bring a photographer to Cardiff to do big setup days where they'll spend all day doing different clothing changes and all this kind of stuff. So those are sometimes other different photographers. So not everything Doctor Who has been shot by me. Most of the on-set stuff has. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking to do more. I've done a couple of little things since Doctor Who finished this year. I've done a couple of other little, the one for Channel 4 and a BBC thing that aren't out yet. Just dailies, just in and out, a couple of days here and there. But yeah, I mean, I signed up with an agent in London to try and get more of the kind of unit photography and film work.
Now, how's that transpired?
But it's not really transpired at all yet. It's slow. But yes, it's, you know, I'm not desperate to do stuff right now. It's a slow process, you know. Just
right.
And it'll be the same thing again. It'll be one day someone will say, "Can you do this?" And if I can do it and say yes, and I do a really good job, that can lead on to lots of other stuff. You know, you never know when that's going to happen.
No, indeed.
Tomorrow I could get a phone call that leads on to a massive job.
Yeah.
In 5 years' time, that could lead to something massive, you know. And that's always what I'm thinking is like, I do this now, that might lead to something else, which might lead to something else. And people move jobs all the time, and you move with them.
Yeah. So how do you fill the rest of your time when you're not working on Doctor Who?
Last few months, I've been working on my house, DIY painting.
So you've been photographing?
No, I've not been photographing. I mean, I'm always got stuff happening, you know. There's always a little bit of corporate stuff and commercial stuff and odd jobs here and there, and so I try not to panic. Every year, or previously to Doctor Who, before the schedule of that, I used to get really panicked in January and February because that would be the really quiet time after Christmas when no one was booking anything.
Indeed.
And every year it'd be like, there's no work coming in, what am I going to do? And then, you know, March would come and suddenly it would get busy and it'd be fine. Yeah. But I wouldn't learn my lesson, so every year would be the same, and I feel the same every year. And the same happens now, you know, in between stuff, you think, there's no work coming in, what am I going to do next? And then you get busy and it's fine.
You earlier in the conversation, you kind of dismissed it really as but when I talked about personal projects, and you said you had lots of ideas.
I wouldn't say lots, I've had some.
You've had some. Are you willing to share?
Well, I like shooting landscapes as well. But then every photographer likes shooting landscapes. I don't know anybody who doesn't shoot landscapes now and again. It's like, but not kind of like sunsets and stuff. I really like Nadav Kanda's work.
Oh yes,
and people like that. And one of the things he did was, I don't know whether you've seen it. It was a really great book, the Yangtze River book.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, I'd love to do that with the TAF.
That'd be a nice project.
Yeah, so someone can steal that idea now before I do it, because it'll be 5 years before I get anyone to do it.
But they wouldn't shoot
something
it like
that.
you.
Well, no, this is the thing they always say, isn't it? You can tell people about your ideas because no one will shoot it the same as you.
Because I'm currently doing a book on Pembrokeshire, and and I'm from Pembrokeshire, so but I kind of know that, and I live there now. But and loads of books have been done about Pembrokeshire, and it's avoiding the cliche,
Yeah, absolutely.
and finding your voice to say what you want to say.
Yeah.
Where are you from then, Simon?
I'm from Cardiff.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, I've always lived in Cardiff. But yeah, I mean, I thought, again, it's like that's right on my doorstep, isn't it? So I can do it in between doing other things in theory, but just never get the kind of. It's getting going, I think. Once you start, it's okay, but it's getting started.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple of ideas for portrait projects as well, where I could, because I want to do more portrait work. So you should shoot what you want to shoot for commercially, shouldn't you? So I should shoot more portrait work. And then the other thing that it's not really personal work, but I want to try and get into doing actors' headshots.
Ah, right, okay.
Because
that's an interesting area to work in.
Yeah,
it is interesting. I've done a few.
Yeah,
and I found that it's generally speaking, it's people I know who I've met while doing dramas and stuff, and they asked for headshots. It's an interesting area, especially with young actors and female actors. Very interesting area because they seem, or because I used to work in television, used to see lots. Spotlight was the so you'd trawl through Spotlight.
Yeah. Still is, isn't it?
Yeah, still is. Yeah, and you'd see. But the tendency was that they over glamorized themselves.
Yeah, over retouched as well.
Over retouched. Everybody had really wonderful skin,
plastic skin.
Yeah, plastic skin stuff. Do you do a lot of when you're doing portraits or doing your wedding stuff? Do you do a lot of?
I've forgotten about wedding stuff. Yeah, I did used to do wedding stuff. I've kind of stopped now.
Right. Okay.
I've put it on hold anyway for the time being. No, I don't do a lot. I've just recently taught myself a little bit of retouching.
Right.
Online tutorial video type stuff. I know how to use Photoshop, but there's particular techniques to retouch people without them looking plastic. No, I don't like that very, very smooth, shiny style of retouching at all. I didn't used to retouch wedding pictures at all, no, because my approach to weddings was always documentary.
Yes.
So no, not really. That was more kind of like darkroom dodge and burn stuff.
Yeah.
But I can do a little bit of retouching now, but I don't do it on the Doctor Who stuff because that's done by somebody else.
Right. Do you shoot anything on film anymore?
No. I had what was the last film? I've still got 2 medium format film cameras. I've got a Rolleicord TLR and one of those Fuji 6x9 rangefinders, which is an amazing camera. It's just the scanning. I can't be doing with the scanning anymore. I had years and years of that, shooting film and scanning and dust spotting and stuff. Yeah. People argue that film is better than digital, but it's just not anymore. I think from any technical standpoint, digital has surpassed film now. I had a Leica for a while, but again the scanning got to be a pain. I just didn't use it because I didn't want to scan it, and then I finally broke down and bought an M9. And I had that for a few years, but I just sold it because I'm not using it. I really like the camera and I really like the pictures that come out of it. It's just not that useful for me. I can't use it on set because it's not quiet. People say Leicas are quiet, but the M9 is way too noisy to use on the set. Yeah. So I've kind of moved away from that. I kind of enjoyed the experience of using a rangefinder, but it's difficult to find a camera that is good for. Because I'm a professional, I have to justify everything as business costs, Yeah, indeed. And I can't justify owning a Leica from a business point of view at all. I sold the Leica and I bought a Hasselblad digital, but it's like a 10-year-old one, so it only cost me the same as a 5D. It was ridiculously cheap. And that's what I use for my studio stuff, for the white backgrounds and iconics and stuff like that, which is incredible. And I can't see how a film camera could be as good technically as that. Maybe if you shoot 10x8 or 5x4 it's better, but no one's doing that really, are they, anymore?
Not many, no. Only the purists.
Yeah. I mean, if I was shooting landscape fine art landscape stuff for a living, then maybe I'd shoot 5x4.
Yeah,
10x8, but
it was interesting. I was telling Brian earlier. I was sitting next to us here. I was shooting in a wood, T Canol Wood, which is just below Pentrefan in West Wales, and it was kind of a place where 5.4 would work because the wood itself kind of gave you gradation of light, which is really interesting, and 5.4 would probably enhance that, I think.
Yeah, I owned one for about 6 months. I bought because I was like, I want to do 5.4. I want to do 5.4. This is a few years ago now, and I bought a speed graphic.
The old-fashioned sort.
Yeah, second hand off eBay. I think it was about 300 quid.
Yeah,
because the price you can buy it for next to nothing now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think I shot 6 sheets of film on it and then put it in the cupboard, and it was like, oh, it's just too difficult. So I only had 3 film holders, which meant I could only shoot 6 sheets at a time anyway.
Yes.
So if you go out into the landscape and you make the effort to get there, so you only have 6 pictures to take, and then you've got to come back and process them. And processing was a faff as well, and you had to buy a special tank that could put the sheets in. And I think I've still got half a box of sheet film somewhere in a cupboard. I love the idea of doing it. It's just, and again, it's the same with the Leica. I love the idea of it, but just in practical terms, I just don't do it. No. I don't get sentimental about cameras. If I'm not using them, I get rid of them and I get something else.
Yeah, the sentimentality about cameras is a weird one, isn't it? Because the only camera I'm really sentimental about was my kind of first SLR, which was a Zenit E.
Oh, Zenit. That's what I had to teach the kids with when I went to
Helios
American summer camp.
Lens, 50mm lens, and then I had a 135 as well, which I'd bought, which was a really fine lens, beautiful for portraiture, and I think I gave them away. Yeah. And I thought, well, maybe but hey, I'd never use it.
I mean, there are people, I can understand collecting cameras from an aesthetic point of view. Yes. Some of them look really nice, and that's fine, but I don't really do that either. I can't think of anything that I really would want to keep. Like I'm at the moment I've got 2 5Ds, a Fuji X-T1, and a Hasselblad. But they're all just work tools, If I need, and if I switch to a Sony A9 at some point, then I'll get rid of the Fuji to pay for that. Yeah. I don't particularly like or dislike the Fuji at all. It's just something that I take pictures with,
Yeah.
And if it's something better that will allow me to take better pictures in an easier way, then I'll go for that.
So where next, Simon?
Where
next?
Well, hopefully another series of Doctor Who. So that would take up 9 months of my life. I don't work every day on it, so I can do other stuff in between. The actors' headshots will be something that I'll be looking at doing soon. But yeah, I'd like to get into doing more TV and film stuff. Bigger, more budget, more exciting locations. It's like anybody, just more of the same, really, more but better. Like I said, I don't really do 5-year plans or 10-year plans, or no. I kind of go from one thing to the next and see where it takes me, and it's worked for 20 years. So I don't know is the answer. Where next? Wherever people want me to work.